What? I said I want it because I feel like it's important.
You like your job.
Yeah, it's true. Okay. This is a little bit small, but I'm sure we'll zoom in. We're going to talk about the cosine rule today, which, again, should be old news. Should have been stuff we've done before. If not, I'm here to remind you. Also true that these formulas, and the cosine rule does have two formulas, are in your packet, so you don't have to memorize them. These are definitely ones that, like, until I'm like in the middle of the chapter and I've been using them 3 times a day, like I have to go back and look all the time. So you should feel okay about doing that as well. Yeah. Okay. Do we all get our stat box? Okay. Oh, there's a zoomed in stat box. Okay, so here's the cosine rule. Again, the book kind of went overkill and wrote it 3 different ways. I feel like you will be fine if you just write down one. We still have that triangle from yesterday that we talked about with the angles having the uppercase letters and the sides having the lowercase letters. So what we can do is if we know 2 sides, so like if we know the side A and B, and we know the actually, wait, I'm going to go different. I'm going to match the top one here. So, if I know these sides B and C, and I know the angle in between them, I can find the opposite side. Yes?
Which one do you prefer?
I would just say, actually, the one that's in your note packet's this one. So this one's what's in your formula packet if you want to use that one.
So which one are you going to use for like example?
Probably this one.
Okay.
Or it might depend. It might depend on like the way the problem is set up.
Okay.
Literally one of your side is equal whole square root of that side is equal to the square of the other sides minus the corresponding
And that's the really important part. The only thing that's super important is that the side and the opposite angle are almost on like opposite ends of your formula. If you're looking for side C, the angle has to be the angle you use. If you're looking for side B, that's got to be the angle. If you're looking for side A, that's got to be the angle. So that's like the really important part for setting this up. Again, also, in this situation, it's like a side angle side situation. Knowing we talked about that yesterday, right? Okay. Okay, so when to use the cosine rule. So we can use the side angle side. When it's side angle side, we can use just like the formula that we just had. Now if it's side side side, then we have to do some switching around a little bit. The good news is that your notes kind of, not your notes, your formula packet sort of switch it around for you, which I would recommend, using the proper formula rather than trying to switch it yourself, even though you can do that yourself. So if it's side, 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 you need to find the angle and then we rearrange it. Again, this is a little bit overkill because it's written in several different ways, but this is for if you have side, side, side. So side, 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 and again, this is the one that's in your packet. If you want to focus on one, I guess, match the one that's in your packet. So for this one, it's when we know 3 sides, we can set this up and we can find the measure of our angle. Now, technically you don't need to have this one down because if you know the first one, you could, like I said, you could rearrange it. But I've noticed students kind of getting confused. So I would just make sure you know that when you have side, 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 and you're looking for an angle, we use the one that starts with cosine. But then if you have 2 sides and an included angle, you use the one that starts with your side length because that's what you're looking for. again, both are in your packet, so you don't have to do that rearranging yourself. The important thing here again is that your angle here corresponds with the side that you're subtracting. Like that's the important connection there as well. Are these both looking familiar, or did you mainly stick to one last year? Both looking okay? When you do what? I know. Look at all these triangles. Okay, so remember you must use the inverse function to find the angle. So that's based on the last formula we were looking at. You know, we will have to use the inverse cosine to end up getting C by itself based on that last formula. All right, and then something to remember from geometry as well is that across from the smallest side is the smallest angle, and vice versa, across from the smallest angle is the smallest side. It also works with the largest angles on the largest side and the middle angles on the middle side. So just keep that in mind in case you have just some information and you're asked to find, like, let's say you have 3 sides and you're asked to find the largest angle, like that would affect how you would set it up. So keep that in mind. So we're going to do 2 examples. We're going to use each of the formulas. We're going to start with the first formula and like finding the missing side, and then we will also use the second formula and find the missing side lengths, or I'm sorry, missing angles for the second one. All right. So like I said, we're going to start with finding the missing side. Okay. So notice that we do have like the side, angle sides type situation. So we'll use the first formula. So I'm just going to take the formula from the packet. I like to use x for my variable. It's my favorite variable, so that's going to be my missing side. So that will go in the C spot. So this will have to go in the angle spot, and these guys will go in the A and B spots, and it doesn't matter which. So I end up with x squared equals 6.3 squared plus 4.8 squared minus 2 times 6.3 times 4.8 times the cosine of 32 degrees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it is a lot of writing, this is true. At the same time, it is a lot of like plugging and checking in a sense too, if you can get everything in the right spots. A couple of things to remember. Make sure your calculator is in degrees because the angle is given in degrees. So that's one thing to remember. And also remember to try and wait to do some of that rounding till the end. Now, I'm not saying that you can't plug all of this into your calculator. I personally like to do it in small chunks, especially then in case I make a mistake, I can kind of pinpoint and check different parts of my problem rather than having to just start all over if I make a mistake. So I like to square those and add those up. And then I also like to times these. So 6.3 squared plus 4.8 squared, I got 62.73. And I do use my calculator on this stuff. And then I end up doing the 2 times 6.3 times 4.8, and I got 60.48. And then I go from there and plug that into my calculator. I'm just going to double check my calculations here because I want to check the rounding. So I end up with 11.44005114. So I've got one last step here. What's the last step I have to do?
Get x by itself.
Yes, get x by itself, which means we've got to square root. And keep in mind, most of it in your calculators, you can, hit the square root and you can go and grab that number so you don't have to type them all up. You guys know what I'm talking about? So x technically equals plus or minus 3.38, but can I have a negative side length? No, so we do take the positive one. And notice that I waited till the very end to switch to my 3 sig figs. So my missing side length is 3.38 kilometers. We will take a look at finding those angles next using the other part of the formula. Are there any questions? Any steps you're not sure about with finding the side length? Okay. Because, technically when I square root it could be positive or negative, but because it's a side length and length can't be negative, then we just use the positive one. I just like to remind people of that because sometimes when we get in a geometry mode, we get so focused on positive, positive, positive that we tend to forget sometimes. So that's why I like to bring that up. All right. All right, so here we're going to find, too much, the measure of all of the angles. Oh, come on. Find the measure of all of the angles. So we can see this is like a side, side, side situation. So since we have side, 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 we are going to use the other formula. So I'm just taking it straight out of the packet. We do have to find all of the angle measures, which means we're going to have to use this formula at least twice, since we don't know sine rule yet. You know how I had mentioned that how the smallest angle is across from the shortest side and all of that? That's where this might come into play. If the question said just find the smallest angle, then you want to make this angle C because it's across from 11. Now that's not what this question says, so we're just going to have to start with one and find them all. So we can go from there. So let's just start with, let's start with finding the smallest one. So let's just go ahead and say that that's C. Then I would have the cosine of C equals, I got to have these ones that are right next to it first. So that's 19 squared plus 13 squared minus, that opposite one is what has to be subtracted. I only did the top half of that. But are there any questions about that setup? So because I'm looking for this angle, I have to do minus 11. And then in the denominator, I've got 2 times 19 times 13. Again, you know we want to try to avoid rounding, so I'm just going to evaluate the numerator and denominator separately and just leave it as a fraction for a moment. Again, any questions with the setup? Alright, so then I end up with cosine of c equals, I got 409 in the numerator and 494 in the denominator. And this is where we have to use the inverse. So my angle C will equal the inverse cosine of the 409 over 494. Most of your calculators should be able to handle that. I mean, if you've got a graphing calculator, you can use the division symbol inside those parentheses and you'll be just fine. And this way, you don't have to worry about like rounding, you know, the fraction too much. We'll round it after we get it out of here. Did you guys all leave your calculators in degrees? All right, so then we'll get our degree answer. I got about 34.1 degrees. Is that what you guys got? All right. Okay, I can come check your calculator. I want you guys to find, let's see which one I want you guys to do. Find angle B on your own. So kind of repeat that process with angle B. So you'll have to have the 11 and the 19 first, and then it has to be minus the 13. Looks like you guys are almost done. So the measure of angle B should come out to be about 41.5 degrees. If you're not quite done, that's okay. I would finish it out. Make sure you get the right answer. If not, have me come check. Now to find the last angle, you could repeat the whole process. Does anyone remember from geometry like what you could do that might be a bit shorter?
180 minus 2 angles.
Yeah, it's technically,
If you trust your math.
it's called the triangle sum theorem because all the angles add up to 180. So if I do 180 minus the 41.5 and minus the 34.1, I'll get, what was it, 104.4? So those are my three angle measures then. We found all three. So we're just going to hit up the stat box and call it a day for notes, but are there questions or concerns about the cosine rule? So I know if you guys look on your calendar, we're not going to do new notes tomorrow, okay? So I would really make sure that you get this assignment done and then ask questions.
Wait till it's
I see it. All right, I'll get to that in a second. If you guys could think of one big thing to remember from this section. Anything pop out for you guys? The only thing that I would say is that like whatever this is, let's say it's angle I and side I. Make sure they're like opposite sides of the formula, right? Whether you're doing the angle formula or you're doing the side formula, the side length and the angle are like on opposite sides of that formula. So just kind of keeping that in mind. They're opposite in the diagram and opposite in the formulas. So this is the 9B assignment.